After playing video games for more than half my life, it's pretty easy to assume that I, in fact, enjoy them. And ever since the beginning of my gaming career, or whatever you want to call it, I've always wanted to make my own. So for the Student Choice Project, I decided to make my very own multiplayer FPS game, while also going over the games that inspired me, the development process, and how you all at home can learn from my mistakes. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's just hop straight into it.
I think it's time we blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
So let's start with the beginning of the development process. I've always wanted to make a game, like I said in the intro, and when the Student Choice Project was announced at the beginning of the year, I started coming up with ideas for a game called Remade. And this game was going to be a culmination of all of my favorite games, such as TF2, League of Legends. Don't play that game, by the way. It's not very good. Valorant and Overwatch a little bit. I don't like that game very much, but it was going to be a pure shooter with fast-paced movement mechanics. Oh yeah, I forgot Titanfall 2. That game is great, and I wanted to incorporate a bit of that movement style into the game. And I made a whole list of characters that I wanted to add. The list is too long for me to go over all of the characters in this video, but the character I wanted to make for the project was Trail. She's like a wind manipulator. She has like these floating kunai, very similar to Jet and Valorant, but she had her own like unique gameplay quirks, I guess would be the word. She had a very unique gameplay style than any other hero that I've ever seen. Maybe I'm just tooting my own horn because I made her, but I wanted her to be like a very aggressive champion. Now we're going to move on to the actual development process. And this is where I made the FPS controller, I made the shooting, I made the UI, I made the multiplayer system, pretty much all the basic gameplay. So the first thing I started with was the Aio Fps Controller, which I got from the Unity Asset Store. The reason I got it from the Unity Asset Store was because I was a bit too lazy to write my own, and I only had a week to complete this, so you know, I gotta save as much time as I possibly could. After implementing the FPS controller, which by the way did not include the shooting, I moved on to the shooting. So to do the shooting, I looked up a raycasting tutorial from Brackeys. By the way, if you're getting into Unity, I highly recommend this dude. He's a legend in the community, and he's done a lot for me when I was learning Unity and during this project, of course. After getting the shooting done, it was time to move on to the UI. And for this, I used a tutorial from Brackeys once again. I already had some previous experience with making UI for an FPS game, so this was pretty easy for me to get done. UI, if you don't know, is any sort of indicator that's on the screen, such as a health bar, an ammo counter, or round timer. It just really depends on the game that you're making. Every game needs UI. After finishing the UI, the character controller, and the shooting, it was finally time to move on to the multiplayer system. The very first issue that arose with this was that my Aio FPS controller would not work with Mirror, the Unity asset I was using to make the multiplayer system. If you don't know, making multiplayer games is not a very easy thing to do, and using Mirror rapidly speeds up the process and makes it easier. We'll get on to why I use quotation marks there in a minute, than a traditional starting from scratch system. So going back to why the FPS controller did not work with Mirror. The reason for this is because of one line of code. This line of code and this line of code. There's one difference. Mono is replaced with behavior. Do I know what that does? No, I do not. I have no clue what it changes. However, I know that you need to change a few specific functions in order for it to work, and I did not know how to do that with this Aio FPS script. So to get around this problem, I decided to use a tutorial from, you guessed it, Brackeys. Like I said, this guy's a legend in the community, and I highly recommend him if you're trying to get into the Unity scene. Boom boom. You guys are good. Gosh, where we go? No. After fixing the FPS controller, it was finally time to make clients synchronize between each other. This means that each player could actually see the other players and could interact with them, whether that be through collisions or shooting them. Thankfully, this didn't have nearly as many issues as the FPS controller. However, I still needed to fix a few bugs. The most prevalent one was that every time a new client joined the server, every client's POV would switch to that client's POV, meaning that everyone could see through the eyes of the player who had most recently joined the server. Obviously, you don't really want that. You want each client to have their own POV and make sure that none of them have the same exact one. Fixing this was relatively simple, but it took me around 2 to 3 days because of my inexperience with C# and Unity. However, once I got that fixed, I finally had the base for the multiplayer game that I wanted to make. However, I was at the project deadline, so I could not continue. I had a lot of fun making this video, so thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good day.